You were not recording that, correct?
I can delete it.
Law firms need to understand that it's not always about how do I get more traffic to my website. It's about what are you doing with the people who've actually reached out to you and how are you converting as many of those into clients as possible with as little attrition as possible.
So how many leads you get is what you do with the leads you're given.
This is Ted DeBettencourt. Ted and I met each other at the PILMA conference a year and a half ago?
2 years ago. Previous PILMA.
Yep, in New Orleans. Ted came over to me and he said, "Hey, I'm Ted. Were you aware of what's going on with Engage?" That was the intro to the conversation. And
we
I
got
said,
some clients using Engage, so I wanted to, spread the word.
And I knew nothing about Ted. I knew nothing about Juvo, which is Ted's company. From that conversation, we found significant mutual alignment. I will say that over the past year and a half, probably 90% of the law firms that we work with have switched to Juvo. They've stayed with Juvo. Juvo is a chat platform. Is that how you describe?
Yeah, a chat service.
A chat service. You may know their competitors, Apex, which is now, I think they got acquired and changed their name. Blazio. Engage, which is owned by Avo, Martindale, Intaker. Who are some of the other platforms that you see before people come to Juvo?
Client Chat Live is the only other one, and they got bought by the company that owns Alert. So it used to just be Engage, Apex, and then the market's kind of expanded a little bit, but now some of the companies are kind of getting bought up. So the landscape has changed pretty quickly in the chat world over the past 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, the chat has become I wouldn't say frictionless, but a less friction way for people to communicate with law firms, find out if they actually have a case, and then wind up becoming a client. We used to see heavy volume in phone calls. Then we started seeing heavy volume in forms, and then chats have really evolved over the past 4 or 5 years. I think with the advent of AI, chat has become a different animal.
Yep, for sure.
Right? People don't know if they're actually communicating with someone, A, from the firm, B, from the United States, C, a person at all. Mm-hmm. And chat comes in a whole bunch of different flavors. But I think that the one thing that is undeniable is that if you can give a prospective client the ability to communicate with a representative of the firm and find out more information about a prospective case, that is a better user experience than them having to pick up the phone, wait on hold, only contact during business hours, or reach an after hours intake center, or fill out a form and just wait. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go through, kind of talk about a little bit about who you are, the Juvo platform.
Sure.
And then we can get into a little bit more.
It's been a pleasure working with you over the years now. And we love the relationship, and we're thankful for, everything you do for us. We love the relationship because we're able to kind of show your clients how many more leads we can get them through our chat service. So chat has evolved over the years. It used to just be popping up on the website, starting conversations, and that's still the core of what we do. But what we're seeing is that it's kind of evolved. So while it's evolved in terms of how AI is getting used, the other evolution has been the methodology in which chats come in. So it used to just be website chats. Now, each year, we're seeing a greater percentage of our clients' leads coming in through SMS. So offering mobile SMS and answering those for the firms is a new communication medium, which our firms are benefiting from, because now, how many millennials pick up the phone and call each other? They're not. They're texting, they're chatting, they're doing this instant messaging. So we're now able to meet these clientele where they're at. So we don't want to force them to do something they're not comfortable with. We kind of meet them where they're at. So not only are we doing the chat, we're doing the text messaging, and as Google evolves, so do we. So Google Business Messages is back on the market now. So another way that we can answer those, and those help in the local rankings factor. And then even on the local search ads, the LSAs.
Local service ads.
So, the ones that now appear even higher than the pay-per-click ads. And Google really likes those leads. Depending on the vertical, it's not for every market and for every practice area, but for those where there are, we discovered that when you answer those messages, it not only gets you more Google leads, but it also increases your local service ads rankings. So you get more phone calls, you get better phone calls, it lowers your LSA ad cost. So there's a lot of ways in which we can help firms answer not only the chats, but the texts, the LSAs, the GBPs, all those methods of communication, which a lot of people are more comfortable using than maybe filling out a form or picking up the phone. We know phone calls are always best, but not everyone's ready to pick up the phone right now. So we kind of fill that gap for the firms.
Do you only service the legal industry?
No, we have, we started in law. So the business started, it was literally just me. I had a small SEO agency up in Boston. I had about 5 to 10 businesses I was helping, most of which were law firms. I have a law background, never practiced, but went to law school out in Cleveland, Case Western. And I was servicing my clients doing SEO, and I was using some of the chat companies we talked about previously. And I really liked what they were doing, but they kept screwing up my chat. So I was kind of the middleman between the chat company and the law firm or the business. And the chat company would screw up. The lawyers would yell at me, "Hey, Ted, you're sending me these leads. They're not any good." I'm like, I'm okay, I'll tell them. And I'd tell them, and they'd say, "Yeah, Ted, we'll make those changes. We'll fix it. It'll be great." And they wouldn't make the change. So I got pretty frustrated. I was like, all right, well, I'm getting yelled at. I might lose a client here. And I said, all right, well, I'm just going to fire them, and I'm going to try answering chats myself. So I pulled up a company. It was called Zoop.im. It was a Portuguese company that did chat. So you could put chat on your website and answer it yourself. So I told the lawyers, all right, now here, you'll get good chats, but you have to answer them. Well, the lawyers wouldn't answer them. Or it would take 20 minutes, 30 minutes to answer a lead. And if it takes you more than 30 seconds to answer a chat, you've already lost the chatter. So I started doing that for my firms and my businesses. And I said, wow, I was tracking everything using CallRail and form tracking. So I saw how many leads they were getting. When I put chat on the website and I answered it, and I could see the total lead volume. So not just the calls and the forms, but also the chats. So when I did that, I'm like, wow, my firms are getting about 50% more leads. I said, okay, I'm onto something here. And the agency business is very hard. And I said, all right, this is one little thing that I can kind of say I can do really, really well and master it. So what started as me answering chats on just, 5 to 10 businesses in Boston has now evolved, and we're on about 1,100 sites around the country. And sorry, to get back to your original question, we work in the high value lead gen space. So the PI firms, the criminal defense, the family, the bankruptcy, estate planning. And then we also service about 30% of our clients are in the home services. So think roofers, flooring, retirement communities, and then lastly, elective medicine. So plastic surgery, dentists, orthodontists, stuff like that.
There's a pattern here, right? If you look at how Scorpion evolved, right? They entered the same spaces. You're talking about the same spaces. These are known niches, right? What are some of the things that legal has not yet adopted, or law firms have not yet adopted, that you see some of these other higher value spaces adopt or utilize?
We're seeing firms utilize on the intake side. Firms are catching up to some of the home service businesses. Not all of them, like the small home service businesses aren't there, but the big ticket ones that have, massive presence, their lead follow-up is typically stronger than a law firm. So sometimes we'll pass leads to a firm and we'll think, okay, everything's good. You have an X% chance of signing this based on that. And then after the fact, we'll talk to the firm. They're like, yeah, we called them once, like 3 days later, and we weren't able to get a hold of them. And that was that. So what we're moving into more is trying to help firms on the lead follow-up side, because there's such a gap there in getting firms. Once you get in the lead, now you got to do the work. Sometimes it's served to you on a silver platter, but oftentimes you really have to do some work to convert that lead.
This is really important for law firms, right? When you talk about high value practice areas, the loss of a singular client could mean significant loss of revenue, potential revenue for the firm. So some of the things that these other industries utilize that law firms can, but most have not. I recently got my HVAC replaced. I had an appointment scheduled. I immediately got a text message. Text message confirmed my appointment time. The night before, I had a confirmation again. Hey, we'll be there at this time. And then 30 minutes before they arrived, I get another text message. Hey, they give me the text name. So-and-so is on the way. Feel free to reply to this text, or here's their direct phone number. Right? That type of flow, I don't think we see from law firms.
No, I typically don't. And how much did it cost you to fix your HVAC?
$1 million? No, it was $7,000, right? It's high value.
Yeah.
Right. We bought a whole new HVAC system. It's expensive, and
it was not $1 million case.
Correct. Yeah. Right. It was not $1 million case, but you make a really good point, because law firms don't know the value of the leads that are being passed over from chat or coming through a form. And I think the same principles apply. Absolutely. Even to a missed phone call.
Yeah.
If someone calls in after hours, the call doesn't get answered, that is a lead.
Yeah.
That lead needs to be followed up upon. Even if you don't answer the phone, even if you have no idea if that was real, if it wasn't real, you need to have some sort of a process that's set up that takes this multi-channel form of communication, which will only add more over time, right? We've talked about text messaging, chats, forms, calls. What about social media messages, right? Facebook messages. You talked about Google Business Profile messages, LSA messages. Who knows what the next point of communication is going to be? WhatsApp messages. I've seen integrations there. How do firms who are not yet at the point where they've adopted a follow-up flow technology, what is a baby step that law firms can take to get one step closer to full automation, just so that those who are watching this aren't completely scared off by the concept of follow-up automation?
Sure. Well, even a prelude to follow-up automation is understanding what intake sounds like. So I always say, even before you doing the follow-up stuff, are you recording your phone calls? If you're not, you need to be. If you're recording your calls, are you listening to your intake team? Do you know what your good calls sound like and your bad calls sound like? If you don't have a process to measure your current intake, you don't have a process to manage it. So it starts with first getting a hold of your intake, making sure they're saying the right things on the phone. One common disconnect we see is that a lot of PI firms want injury cases, of course, but they won't take vehicle damage. So what if the person on the phone says, well, hey, I'm in the hospital, but my car is a total loss. Do you help with both? I've heard a lot of leads get fumbled because the person cares about their vehicle damage and the firm cares about their injuries. So there needs to be a connection, and make sure you understand how your intake team is handling that, just for an example, to be able to make sure you do that. If you don't do your intake well, you have a huge leaky faucet. So before you even tackle the lead follow-up, first get a handle of the first inbound phone call, then next is figuring out that follow-up process.
Leaky bucket, it's a great analogy. I like to think of it, and I've used this before during my presentations, as, is it easier for you to grow more orange trees, or is it easier for you to squeeze more juice out of the same oranges that you've already picked? Yeah. Right? It's the same concept. Once someone has taken the gigantic step of reaching out to your law firm, whatever method they've used to reach out to your firm, what are you going to do to turn that, if it has the potential to be a case, into an actual case?
Yeah.
They've already reached out. That is a huge step. They've given you their personally identifiable information, their phone number, their email address. They're telling you about sometimes their injuries, the fact patterns of the case. If you don't get them on the phone and you don't actually qualify them, that's a potential loss of revenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Law firms need to understand that it's not always about, how do I get more traffic to my website? That's a whole nother conversation we'll have one day. It's not about how many leads do I have. It's about, what are you doing with the people who've actually reached out to you, and how are you converting as many of those into clients as possible with as little attrition as possible.
Yeah. So how many leads you get is what you do with the leads you're given.
Yes.
That sounds like some philosophical thing.
Yeah.
But it's true.
We'll trademark it. If you had to give a law firm a piece of advice, right? Let's take the chat side out of this. You have experience and you have exposure to hundreds of law firms. What are some of the things that you see repeatedly over and over again, that if someone was to take away one tidbit from this conversation, what's one thing that a law firm can do to improve something at the firm?
If you think about your intake as a sales department of your firm, that's kind of the first shift to how you start thinking about leads. So if a lead is just someone that calls you, you handle it differently. If a lead is something that contacts you once, and then you acknowledge that there has to be a process for the people that pick up on the first call versus the people that you have to chase down for the next week, month via email, text, phone, then you'll kind of take a different approach to how you approach intake. But it always starts with first recording those calls, listen to it. You want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you understand your current process, and then work on managing it and changing it from there, if it needs to be.
How can a firm do that without just cherry picking individual calls, right? You're dealing with a scale problem, because the call that you listen to may be perfect or may be terrible, but may not accurately represent what's happening on the majority of the calls.
Part one, it starts with listening to one call. Most firms have never listened to any of their intake team calls. And it depends on the size of the scale. So, if you're dealing with 1,000 calls in a month, that's a huge process of itself. So, pick 10% and work that way. But you're going to be surprised how quickly you get a call that you don't like, facing that negativity and saying, oh, if this 1 out of 10 sounded bad, that means 10% of them are bad. So, start small, work up. If you get through 100 calls and you're satisfied with all of them, then maybe you don't have a problem. Rarely that's the case. Pretty quickly, you're going to realize that it's, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 8, 1 out of 10 are not being held to what you think is being as it should be and as the SOP is for your firm.
As law firms take that initial step, hopefully they're listening to this advice and they go into their phone platform and they're listening to a couple of calls. Let's say they identify issues. Okay? Pick an issue. What's something that someone would find on a phone call? And let's talk through how they could potentially resolve it.
Sure. So let's pretend the situation I gave. So caller calls up, they have an injury, maybe it's not too severe, but they also have vehicle damage. So the caller is upset about their car. They don't realize that, and maybe the firm doesn't want to take that vehicle damage case. How is that firm handling that situation? So we see that's a common reason why a person might get ticked off on a phone call and then leave and go talk to another firm.
To break down the specific issue, firms are looking for injury cases. Clients are looking for representation for both injury and or property damage.
Yes.
Right? Do you see that most firms that you work with take the property damage cases?
No, there are solutions out there that can be done for that now. But the bigger thing is as soon as the intake person hears that they care about the property damage, if they say it wrong, so it has to be some graceful art saying like, sorry, we can't help you with your vehicle damage. If you say it the wrong way, the person's gonna say, well, all right, well, that's what I care about. So understanding how the intake person is handling that delicate balance is really an important step to making sure that it's done right.
What we're really talking about are diminished value claims.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Like my car, I bought it for 30 grand. I still owe 15 grand on it. It is not totaled, but it's got $10,000 worth of damage. Do I want to put $10,000 back out of my own pocket into my car that really I've got 15 grand left on? Like, it becomes this whole financial problem that people are dealing with, let alone the fact that they now don't have a car to drive once they actually get out of the hospital and they have to go back to work. Diminished value claims that's an interesting issue when you have injury.
It's because it's what the person cares about.
Yes.
Firm cares about the injuries, but the person's hung up on the fact that I got to spend $10,000 to make my car working. And right now I'm out of car, so I'm gonna have to spend more money to get a car in the meantime. It becomes a problem that a person can get really concerned about.
So your organization through chat represents the law firm.
Exactly right.
Right? So when someone communicates this example you just gave, let's assume it's a similar situation with phone calls. Someone calls and has the same issue. How do you recommend navigating that and managing the oversight of people who are not attorneys, who don't necessarily understand the nuances of the law?
Yeah.
Don't want to tell people no to upset them.
Yep.
But also don't want to overpromise.
Yeah.
And then underdeliver.
Exactly. A great point. And the nice thing about chat versus a phone call is it's a lot easier for us to review. Every time we answer a chat, we review it. So all our chats are scored on a 10-point scale. Our agents are hired, fired, promoted, demoted, and bonused based on how well, how empathetic, and how fast, how empathetic, and how well they follow the rules of that firm. So when we set up a SOP for a firm for how to handle that scenario, we can see on every chat, and we do. If we ever screw up, we hear from that law firm pretty quickly exactly what we did or didn't do right. So on the chat side, it's a lot easier to manage because you can read it, whereas listening to phone calls is a lot harder, more time consuming. So what we do for that is we work with the firm up front. So we have some partners that are now starting to take vehicular diminished value claims, and they're not taking them solely for the fact of wanting to deal with them. They really just have a process where basically they send a demand letter and see if they can get some money out of it. If not, they don't take it. If so, they say, hey, sorry, there's no difference we'll get from the insurance company. So we are seeing some more firms take those now, strictly for the reason that they're able to now confidently tell their intake team that they can help them with both. The other firms that are saying, hey, Ted, we just don't want to handle those. It's a pain in the neck. There's usually no additional money we can get for the insurance versus the initial claim. What we're doing is we're trying to take that talking track out of the hands of the intake person and putting it into the hands of the lawyer for that free consultation, or the paralegal who has that. So we don't want, no offense, $15, $20 an hour employee handling that. We want to get that to the paralegal, to the intake department, to the lawyer who does the consultation, so they can gracefully talk to them about all the benefits. Hey, if we're able to, you have an injury case, we're able to get you some real money there that will take care of the car side as well. Don't worry about that. Let us handle your injury side. But you want that coming from someone that has a lot of skill in talking to a potential claimant.
You mentioned the scorecard that you use. That's something that quantifiably, objectively, right, grades someone on their performance during a chat. Can you go through some of the different things that a law firm could look at from an intake phone call perspective that they could utilize, right? I want people to tangibly take away, these are the things that Ted uses on chat. How can I implement these similar things that have already been proven at my law firm?
For the most important cases that come in, if you're a personal injury firm, there's been an accident, someone's injured, maybe dead. They're going through some hard times. Empathy is the number one thing. When they call a firm, probably knowing their family has been in a serious accident and injured and maybe even died in a car accident before, they're shaken up. They don't know what they're doing. They need to know they're in the right place. So when you have your phone team just kind of reading through a script, saying the right things and not showing a human connection, you're failing your firm. You really have to grade for empathy to make sure when someone tells you about their serious injury or a loved one has been injured or in the hospital, oh my goodness, I can't believe what you're going through. That's horrible. Be able to show a human connection.
How do you do that? How do you objectively grade for empathy?
How do you objectively grade for sympathy, empathy? It's tough, but we do put empathy scores on all our chats. So if there's ever a situation where empathy arises, we don't have standard empathy statements like, hey, if they say this, then say that. We grade people on, there's IQ and EQ. So use some emotional emotional intelligence to show that you're trying to build some type of rapport with that person. And you can quickly read a chat and listen to a phone call and just say, there's no vibe here. There's no connection. The person told you their loved one was in a hospital and you said, great, give me your name. Like, okay, there's easy ways to see when it's bad and there's ways to see when it's good. It is subjective scoring, but how you add objectivity to it is you try to rate everything on a, starting out on the scale from 1 to 10. Did the person show a place where empathy would help build rapport? If yes, was a good empathy statement used? How did they build that connection? Did it seem like they were forced to have this conversation, or did it seem like they were trying to help through a friend with the scenario?
For law firms that are trying to do this for phone calls when they don't have written text, some of the ways that they can go about grabbing this information and trying to process through it, it seems like the technology would be available to transcribe phone calls.
Yes, it is.
Right? Process it through an AI system, grade these phone calls, highlight empathy or empathy statements. We're in a very unique, transformative time for our industry and the legal industry. I mean, the world, right? Yeah. But the legal industry specifically has tools that are available to be able to do the things that previously would have taken large amounts of resources, highly skilled people, and time.
Yeah.
I think that's right. That is, could things be accomplished with people instead of AI? Yes, but do you have the man hours and are you willing to absorb the expense? I would rather have a margin of error with AI and be able to process thousands of calls quickly than have to manually parse through and listen to phone calls and then go through that grading process. I think you get more impact. So just ways to think about how you accelerate this process. By the time people watch this video even, I'm sure there are probably going to be tools out here, or there are going to be tools available that can do this out of the box somewhat.
Yep.
I know that in CallRail, You could turn on transcription, right? Make sure that your recording disclaimers are on so that people know that they're being recorded. A call being transcribed is a call being recorded first and then transcribed. CallRail has sentiment analysis, so it can kind of highlight, positive and negative sentiment. I think taking it a step further and going through your grading scale. So you mentioned empathy. What are the other key components of that grading that could be looked for as a law firm owner, managing partner looks at grading their phone calls?
Empathy, sympathy, build rapport, and then having a set protocol of questions you ask. So making sure all the important questions are asked every time. So at the end of the phone call, to some degree of certainty whether or not that's a wanted lead or not wanted. You'd be surprised how many times they miss a question. When did the injury occur? Where did it occur? What hospital did you go to? So the simple stuff. The empathy stuff is the harder stuff to grade on because it's some subjectivity, and you have to make a judgment call in judging a conversation on rapport, 1 through 10. But the really objective stuff is you need to know these 10, 15 pieces of information. If you don't get it, then, then you're missing out.
That could be as simple as just requiring in your case management system that those fields be filled out.
Exactly right.
Right? You could run a report today and look for missing data points. If you don't require them, maybe someone doesn't have the information.
Yeah.
Right? You can't necessarily always require it, hard and fast rule, but you should be able to run reports within case management systems if your data is structured in a way that you could pull that information. You wind up getting into, as you have these conversations about what can be done and how do you make a law firm more efficient, about the different pieces of technology that you thought were advancements in your firm, but have become point solution roadblocks.
Yeah.
So if you have let's look at a real example of this, right? If you have a phone system, let's say you're not using call tracking for whatever reason, or you're not using CallRail, which we know has built-in transcription. Let's say you're using a phone system, which works as a phone system, right? It's a VoIP platform, but it doesn't have transcription. Everything we just spoke about now falls into a bucket of, I can't do that because of my phone system. Right? And now you have to fix a phone system to solve a different problem. Law firms are constantly faced, all businesses are constantly faced with this challenge of, is the technology and process that I'm adopting timeless?
Yeah.
In some regard. What are some of the things that you have seen be timeless and not become roadblocks? And what are some of the things that you've seen that specifically are continuously coming across as roadblocks?
A lot of firms say they care, but how do they show it? So the lawyers that make a difference are the ones that are able to build rapport with their clients and show they care. And how they show they care is it just that meeting with the law firm, or does everything in the law firm resonate with showing they care? So that's from
technology specifically.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like we're talking about being able to, the precursor to being able to grade on empathy or grade on, did they ask certain questions, is that you have the ability to capture that information.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right?
The basics. You need to track your forms. You need to track your calls. You need to track anytime a lead comes in, how it got there. And you need a central place to track all that data. That central place is generally your CRM. If you don't have these requisites in place, you're probably not able to do the next step things you need to do, which is, managing and measuring your intake, managing and measuring the case status management. But it all starts with kind of the foundational pieces of technology. I like to throw chat in that basis of foundational technology. Some may not, but definitely call tracking, form tracking, chat, depending, and then the CRM. So it all starts with there. If you don't have one central place to measure everything, you can't manage it.
What about a piece of technology that you have seen in multiple law firms that you would recommend that has nothing to do with chat? We know that intake and chat are areas of expertise for you, but you've been exposed to so many different processes at so many different firms. What is one thing that you can look at and say, for years, this tool, this piece of technology has been invaluable to law firms, and even in the advent of AI and all the new technology that's available, still has not become something that has become a roadblock to new technology or process implementation?
If you're using Microsoft Teams, you should probably get out of that. People are going to hate you for it.
Why?
It's clunky. It's okay internally. It's worse if you have to do external meetings. I find Zoom to be the easiest way for non-internal team members to communicate with your firm. We like to have internal messaging. We have a team of a little under 100. We like to use internal messaging a lot. So for meetings, we do Zoom. For internal messaging, we use Slack pretty heavily. There's a lot of other substitutes, but we just found those two to be the easiest way for team members to communicate. And having a Slack culture, knowing how to use it properly, when to post things in channels, when to do direct messages, how to huddle, fostering that internal communication has been big for us. And we know a lot of firms that are using it well.
Are you aware of any firms that have been able to adopt Slack and utilize it in a way that is novel, that has helped the firm get a leg up on its competition?
Sure. One of my buddies out in Miami, Eric Mausner, they use Slack internally a lot for their team. So it's a lot about the intake side, chasing down leads when something happens. They want to say, hey, what happened with this lead? Or, maybe the CRM isn't updated, or there's missing information. So if you have to do email for that, email takes time. Slack can be quick and short to get to person. It varies per scale and how your firm is set up. So, bigger firms are different. Smaller firms are easier to use those async communication methods. But for smart firms that are growing, we see that they're able to talk to each other fast using tools like that.
That's an interesting concept, right? Intake floors have traditionally been these large, right, cubicle or just flat table rooms where if you have a question, you raise your arm and you grab the intake manager and you put the call on hold and maybe you transfer it. But if we're talking about a new world where you have DocuSigns going out and you have people responding to text messages, you have clients responding or prospects responding to emails, plus you have phone calls, the ability to multi-thread your communication, pull in information from your case management platform into Slack or whatever asynchronous tool, have quick video calls, have quick voice calls, huddles as Slack calls them. That's an interesting concept. I actually haven't thought about law firms adopting Slack. And we use Slack. Mark and I use Slack all the time to communicate with our teams. And we're constantly integrating new tools with Slack. I think the ability to have an open API removes that roadblock. It future-proofs your organization because anything can integrate at any point in time. It's just all about how you go about doing it. So no, I think that's an interesting takeaway. I'd love for you to tell those watching here something that they can walk away from this conversation with. We've talked about a lot of different stuff, but pull one highlight that you think that no matter what, every firm needs to listen to as they walk away from this conversation.
If you haven't listened to your intake phone calls or you don't have a process in place for someone to do that, I would start with there and make sure when those leads come in, is it better to grow a new orange tree or squeeze more juice from those corner oranges? You want to squeeze more juice. And how you do that is you first understand exactly what's happening with your current intake process. So if you have 1,000 calls to listen to, start with 5, start with 10. Use some of the tools that you have with CallRail, with AI to process those, listen to those, and you can start there and kind of work backwards. You're probably going to find something you don't like sooner than you think. It won't be 1 out of 100. It might be 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 8. And everything, I wouldn't get mad about it. Just use it as a learning opportunity to realize that, hey, we need a better process in place here. So first identify the error, then figure out a process to fix it. But that would be my main takeaway for firms.
Ted, thanks so much for sitting down with us today. Our conversation's always very insightful. It's great to speak to someone who understands technology, marketing, and what's going on within law firms. We're both exposed to dozens, hundreds of law firms on any given week. And I think your insights are really valuable. I recommend anybody who is exploring new ways to intake clients to potentially call up Ted at Juvo.
Or chat with me.
Or chat with him on the Juvo website, right? Was it juvoleads.com?
That's right.
Right, juvoleads.com. Ted and his team, they do fantastic work. Our clients who use it love it, and they do see an increase in leads. That is proven, right? The proof is in the data. So thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation with me today. It's really great.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, John. This has been fun.
Awesome.